box.
Almost. I don't need that. All right. We are going to, is this on? Hello? Hello! Oh, there you go. We're going to discuss the ankle today and the true ankle, in fact, because apparently there's ankles that lie and ankles that tell the truth. No, obviously there is some issues with differentiation between what's the ankle and what's the foot. And so there are, was it 33? 33 bones in the foot, or 27, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, there's only 4 in the true ankle, which is all that I needed to know. So I haven't learnt the other bit yet. Foot people, you can tell me how many bones there are. But that is the ankle joint. So Madhavi is going to explain the anatomy for us.
Hello, everyone. I'm a bit scared, but I think I'll be fine a little later. So you read the first quote we put in there. Okay, next. Yeah. So I'm going to start with the cool facts. There are so many actually online, but I picked the one I really liked about the ankle joint. So next, please. The human foot. So there is a quote I liked. Human foot is a masterpiece of engineering and a work of art. Leonardo da Vinci. Next, please. Ankle joint. Yes. So there, which Yona just mentioned. So we can talk about individually about the ankle joint because we are covering ankle joint, but because we are here as a Feldenkrais practitioner, so we can't just avoid or distinguish. We got to take care of everything. So there are 26 bones, 33 joints, 107 ligaments, which was really fascinating for me, like 107 ligaments. And 19 muscles, 19 tendons. This means that 25% of all the bones in the human body are located in feet. It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I loved it. Next, please. Thank you. People can walk bare feet because the skin on the bottom of their feet is more than 15 times thicker. That's amazing. I loved it. Than any other piece of skin on the human body. Next, please. Ankle joint links the foot. So ankle joint is the only joint which really connects our whole skeleton with the foot. And runners hit the ground with a force of 2.5 times of their body weight. Isn't it amazing? All right, next. I know, it's full on. Ankle joint twist causes mild to severe injuries depending on the severity. All right, okay, so now we're gonna talk about the real ankle bones being involved in the ankle joint. So there is tibia, which is the, I've got a little, we do have skeleton actually, I've covered with the muscles here. So you can talk, yeah, just explore to your own leg. So yeah, you can.
So can everyone just use their right ankle leg, please?
So there is a tibia, which is also called as a shin bone. It's on the medial side of your leg. Yeah, inside. Yep, and you'll have this bony prominence. When you feel it, you can actually really feel the shin. And there is a distal, there is a little, so if you really start exploring, there will be a bone going little laterally and behind, posteriorly, traveling down, and that's fibula. And there is a talus, which you can't actually explore. But if I'll show you in the skeleton, it's the bone just underneath here, underneath the tibia. And there's another bone. So talus is, again, like, it's a Latin word, and it means ankle. So that makes sense. And I mean, it's easier to remember that way. And then there is another bone which is really involved in ankle joint. It's called calcaneum, which is a heel bone. So that's the bone at the bottom. Next.
Talus when you heal.
Next. So tibia and the fibula go from the knee to the ankle, which I've already mentioned. In between, there is an interosseous membrane, which provides the muscle attachment. Next. Tibia is the larger bone and the true weight-bearing bone of the leg. Medial and lateral malleoli are at the distal end of the tibia and fibula, so which we're going to mention now. So if you really go again and explore the medial bony bit, if you really feel it, you'll feel that that's the medial malleoli of the tibia, and on the lateral side, so it's the that's the bony notch is the fibula, the lateral line of the fibula. So it's the extended bit of the tibia and fibula, which makes which forms the malleoli, medial malleoli and lateral malleoli. Next, please. Okay, so ankle joint. Here we are. It's a hinge type of a synovial joint. The distal end of tibia, which I've mentioned, fibula form a malleolar mortise. Okay, so mortise is a new word. With the mortise, it's very famous among carpenters. So they use it from last like thousands of years. Mortise and tenon joint. So that's what it is. So if you really think, I mean, this is the talus, the dome bit, and if you think of the top bit, so this will be the what do you call it? The lateral malleoli and the medial malleoli, and they form this structure, which the socket, and it provides a really beautiful socket for talus to fit into it, and which makes this joint really a very beautiful joint in terms of its stability, in terms of transmitting the body weight into the foot to the arches in the foot for the foot. So the distal end of tibia and fibula form a malleolar mortise in which the pulley-shaped trochlea of talus fits. Next. That's how the structure is. So which I've mentioned the malleoli and the talus, which really fits into that mortise, and calcaneus lies underneath. And that's I'm going to talk about in the next bit. But that's the lateral view of it. Fibula, how it's comma-shaped, surrounds the talus. Next. Okay, ankle joint is the most congruent joint of the human body. I love this word actually, congruent, but I wasn't sure what it actually means, and then I was exploring more and more, and I find this interesting example on the Google. If is that they compare with the congruent as a so there was an example of this joint, shoulder joint, and the hip joint, and they said that shoulder joint is the least congruent joint in human body in comparison to the hip joint. And why? Because I think of this structure, the head of the humerus is bigger than the area where it fits, and it has this big range of motion going on. And with the hip joint, it's little bit more supported, and that's why we have this what do you call it? The range of motion, but at the same time stability. So I think, I'm not sure, I might ask Susan to. Yes. Yes, yeah, that's what and then also I read it like because of the structural arrangement surrounded by ankle joints. So it's ligaments, muscles, tendons, and definitely the structure, the malleoli, which are really, which the talus really fits into it. So so I thought maybe I should just bring this thought or this word in front of you guys. And that's what we said. Stability is provided by the bony configuration of ankle mortise, the talar dome, and the ankle ligaments. Next, please. Again, the same thing, but we just discussed later, talar dome, how it fits really well into the into that socket, and that's the X-ray view of it. Next, please. Okay, so ankle joint. So the true ankle joint. When we talk about ankle joint, there are actually 3 joints involved in ankle joint, which is tibio-talar joint, which is the true ankle joint, which is the tibia and the talus. and the tibiofibular joint, which is the joint between the tibia and fibula. And there is another joint, which is the subtalar joint, which is the joint between the talus and calcaneum. Yeah, that's next. I'll explain you next. So tibiofibular joint is also called syndesmosis joint of ankle joint, covered by a fibrous tissues that holds the joints together. It really has a very important role in terms of ankle joint, more like its stability, it's being able to move. We cannot isolate or talk only about this, the true ankle joint. We have to include that because I'm still not sure, but that's to my understanding. When we do knee, so it's a closed chain thing. When we do knee flexion on this foot, there is some bit of a rotation happening in the tibia, and I think it's to do with that joint. I'm still not sure, but that's my understanding of it. No, okay, that's fine. You can Google it if you are fascinated by this idea of what Medavi was talking about. Mm-hmm. Next, please. Okay, that's the one I just talked, and that's syndesmosis of the ankle joint. Next. Okay, so true ankle joint, talocrural, that's the medical word of it. Do you want to say something about it?
Okay, so to remember talocrural, how do you have a way of saying it? Because we might be just teaching.
Okay, so that's spelling check.
Like tally-ho,
yeah.
tallow, and rural.
Cruel. Yeah, I was struggling with pronouncing it. So, so that's the true ankle joint. Socket formed by the lower end of the tibia, medial malleoli, and the fibula, lateral malleoli, into which the upper part of the body of talus fits. Also known as thenon and mortise joint, which we just have explained. Next, please. Same thing again. That's how it looks like: calcaneum, talus, tibia, fibula, and rest of the navicular. That's the another bone at the front, and cuboid. Okay, next please. Okay, the ankle joint is, so that's the movement part of it. The ankle joint responsible for plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. Do you guys wanna do it just to know what we are talking about? So plantar flexion is when we
planting your foot down.
Planting your foot down, and dorsiflexion would be going your foot up towards the knee or up towards you. Yep. Pretty straightforward. The axis of rotation, I'm just going into a little detail, but I loved it. If you draw a line between tibia and fibula and talus, there is the axis of rotation. That's where the dorsiflexion and plantar flexion happens. But don't worry about it at the moment. Next, please. Subtalar joint, which is a talocalcaneal joint. The talus rests on and articulates with the calcaneus, which is a heel bone, and transmits the majority of the body weight into the ground. And there is a picture on the next slide. Next, please. So that's how it is. So calcaneum, that's the subtalar joint here, and it transmits the weight from talus to here, and at the same time it happens. It goes to the arches as well, but we are not talking about that. So that's how it works. And it is responsible. So next, please. So there will be a movement happening. Now, subtalar joint allows side-to-side motion of the foot. It's called eversion and inversion. So you guys want to explore that? So inversion is when your big toe goes inside. Am I saying it right? Yes. Yes. So it's inversion. And eversion is when your big toes or the foot of your foot goes outside. So this movement is happening actually at the subtalar joint, side-to-side motion. And a little bit further forward, if we really go in detail, it's not just at the ankle or subtalar joint, it's your other phalanges and metatarsus being involved in it. But that's the foot people going to talk about, I think, little in the future. Okay, next please. Okay, that's again the X-ray view of subtalar joint from the lateral side. Next, please. Okay, so that's the movement. So dorsiflexion is the dorsal flexion movement of the top of the ankle and foot towards the anterior tibia bone, and plantar is when you're extending movement of the ankle foot away from the tibia. The next is eversion, which we just did it, turning the ankle and foot outward. Abduction, that's another medical term, away from your midline, away, so that's abduction. And weight is on the medial edge of the foot. So that's another way of remembering it, that your weight goes on the medial side of the foot when you do this eversion. And inversion is the turning the ankle and foot inward, and your weight goes on the outer border of your foot. Pronation and supination, I'm not going into detail because foot people are going to touch that. But that's the part of the whole foot, this bit. Next, please. And that's the picture of it. Next, please. Okay, so there are ligaments involved, and there's so many to talk about, and I wasn't sure what to talk and what not to. So they have just, I'm going to just do touch base, which is just medial ligament, which are known as commonly known as deltoid ligament, which are on the medial side. So it's pretty much straightforward, but they're saying it means medial side, medial, and they're deltoid. Why deltoid? Because they look like they are in that deltoid shape. The picture will be in the next slide, and there are, oh, next please. Next. So that's how it is. So that's how it looks. That's the deltoid ligament, and that's on the medial side of the foot, of the ankle joint. And they really are important in that, providing that stability, congruency of that around that joint. And I just want to mention, I made a little note about those. Okay, but before that, I'll just tell you about the lateral ligaments, which are, so I really find it fascinating. I mean, when I was just preparing for this, they're pretty straightforward to, if you really are interested to remember them. Where they are attached is that how they name them. So if it's posterior, that means behind. Telo means talus, and fibula means fibula bone ligament. So that means they are attached posteriorly at the back to the talus and the fibula. It's pretty, logically they name them. So if you're keen, you can do that way. I find it really nice way to remember them. And same is like calcaneofibular ligament, that's calcaneum, which is pretty straightforward, and fibular, which is attached to the fibula and ligament. So that's how another way of remembering. And these are the lateral ligaments. And if we go to the previous slide, can we? Thank you. And the one more. And this is, so, and there are posterior ankle joint ligaments, which are posteriorly placed. That's the ligament bits. The little note about them, which I really liked it, which is pretty much everyone knows about them. On the inside of the ankle medial side, the joint is stabilized by a thick, strong, fibrous ligament called deltoid ligament. And it sprains to those ligaments called eversion sprains, foot twisted to outwards, and accounts for less than 20% of all ankle sprains. So I like the ratio, and with the lateral side of the joint, which are the lateral ligaments, they are more prone to have injuries. 80% of the injuries are on the lateral side of the ligament. Isn't it fascinating, the ratio? So it's, I think, because of the structural, again, positioning of the ligaments and the thickness of the ligaments, the injuries are more, happens on the lateral side of the ankle joint. Next, please. Next. Like 4 slides, I think. Okay, next, please. That's the another one. Okay, so ligaments, and then there are muscles. There are so many muscles to talk about, which I'm not going to, but I still love to talk about 2 or 3 muscles because I really love them. Gastrocnemius and soleus. And gastrocnemius, we all know that these are the calf muscles. I'll just give you a little example of gastrocnemius. If you think of an onion, so onion has layers. So onion, the topmost layer will be the gastrocnemius, and I've got a little demonstration for you guys. So that will be your gastrocnemius, and there, if you go a little down, there will be a soleus. So that's how they're placed into the layers at the back of the leg, and it's like pretty, like, fascinating. If you really pull these muscles up, the foot goes into plantar flexion automatically, And if you pull this, so this is the front of the muscle, which is tibialis anterior, which is a primary, what do you call that, flexor? Oh, no, sorry, extensor? Yeah. Yes, dorsiflexor of the joint, ankle joint. So if this pulls up, this goes down, and this goes up, and that's how dorsiflexion happens. And if these pulls, this goes back because it doesn't. So this goes into a plantar flexion. So again, another fascinating idea of remembering: play with the skeletal, put the things, color them up, put the ribbons, and you can remember in a nicer way. Okay, so another interesting thing I found about soleus was the second heart muscles in a human body. Did anybody knew about it? So I really loved it. These are the second heart muscle in our body. And they are also, I think they are because of the slow twitch fibers they have in them. And I didn't go in detail. I'm not going in detail. But they're also called the tortoise of the leg. Yeah. So, yeah, I thought maybe I should share this. Sorry? Yeah, I think it's because of the slow twitching fibers when you run and you need that power to continuously. Yeah, there was so much to know, but I think I'm not going into that detail. You can explore. Okay, next. And another one. They both united into one band of tissue, inserts into the heel bone, forms the Achilles tendon. And we all know that bony, which if you want to explore, just touch it. Yep, and the calcaneal, which is also called tendocalcaneus, Achilles tendon. And this is the most powerful, thickest, and strongest tendon in the human body. So that's another thing to remember. Yep, next please. I think that's it. Oh, that's the picture of them. Achilles tendon here, soleus, gastrocnemius. So soleus is underneath of gastrocnemius, like layers. And next, that's it. Okay. And next, I think there's something on that. No, nothing. That's it. Thank you. There is a YouTube link. Are you guys bored or are you okay? I mean, I've got a little 4 minutes of video, what we just talked about. It's on YouTube, but if you are really interested, we can play. If not, we can continue. Up to you guys. You want to play? Okay, let's play that one. Thank you. So I'm handing over to you now, I think. And the voice.
Synovial hinge joint, and the main movement.
There's no voice.
Dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. So one way of remembering which way is plantarflexion and dorsiflexion is if you just think of, okay, so this tutorial is on the ankle joint. So the ankle joint is this joint here between the talus, the tibia, and the fibula. So it's a synovial hinge joint. The main movements that you get at this joint. Dorsiflexion joint. So the ankle joint is this joint here between the talus, the tibia, and the fibula. So it's a synovial hinge joint, and the main movements that you get at this joint are dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. So one way of remembering which way is plantarflexion and dorsiflexion is if you just think of a plant on the floor and you want to squash that plant, you will press down in this direction. So plantarflexion is squashing a plant movement, and dorsiflexion is bringing the toes up towards the head. So the distal ends of the fibula and the tibia essentially form this socket which the talus slots into. So on either side of the talus, you've got the malleoli. So you've got the lateral malleolus of the fibula laterally, forming the lateral wall of this socket. Medially, you've got the medial malleolus of the tibia, forming the medial wall of the socket. And superiorly, the roof of the socket is formed by the inferior surface of the tibia. So I've just isolated these two bones, the tibia and the fibula, and you can see the roof of the socket formed by the inferior surface of the tibia bone. And then you've got the medial malleolus and the lateral malleolus forming the walls of this socket. So the talus just slots into this socket formed by these two bones. So we'll just take a quick look at some of the features of the distal tibia and fibula and the talus before going on to talk about the ligaments of this joint. So I've pointed out the lateral malleolus of the fibula and the medial malleolus of the tibia. And there's some ligaments which bind these two bones together at the distal end. So this is the anterior tibiofibular ligament, and this one posterior is the posterior tibiofibular ligament. So the bones are also held together by the interosseous membrane as well. So this interosseous membrane is supported distally by these two ligaments. So if I just rotate around to the back, you can see there's a groove on the back of the tibia on the medial surface. So this is a groove for the tendon of the tibialis posterior muscle. So you can see this muscle over here running behind that groove. And then laterally, you've got the malleolar fossa on the medial surface of the lateral malleolus. And you've also got a groove for the fibularis longus muscle. So you can see this muscle running behind that groove, or in that groove rather. So we'll just take a quick look at the talus bone as well. So the talus bone, it obviously articulates above with the tibia and the fibula. Below, it articulates with the calcaneus, and anteriorly, it articulates with the navicular. So I've just isolated this bone, and we're looking at it medially here. So it's got a head anteriorly, a neck, and a body. So the body is, so I've rotated around, this is anterior now, up here. So if you see, you can see the body is slightly wider anteriorly. So this means that when the foot is dorsiflexed, the wider anterior part kind of gets wedged between the two malleoli. So the ankle joint is actually stabler in dorsiflexion. So take a look at the inferior surface. There's various facets on the inferior surface which articulate with the calcaneus, but we don't need to worry about that in this tutorial. The superior surface, you can see this kind of, it's dome-shaped, so it's kind of cylindrical, and this slots into that socket I showed you before. So the upper surface articulates with the inferior surface of the tibia, and this is called the trochlear surface. And then you've got the lateral surface, which articulates with the lateral malleolus, and you've got the medial surface, which articulates with the medial malleolus. So the joint capsule of the ankle.
Okay, we are buddies. I forgot to mention about talus. I love this bone because I just correlated to like me being Indian, and we do have so many things about us. But I just want to tell there's one thing which I really like. This talus really correlates with us, as in like doesn't matter how small our houses are, we have space for everyone. So this talus is such a cute, nice little bone that it has a house for tibia, it has a resting spot for fibula, it has a resting spot for down there for calcaneum, at the front navicular. So yeah, it's an Indian bone, I should say. I mean, it's just such a fascinating. I just love it. So I just thought maybe I should mention this.
We researched this separately and came together, and we're both, oh my god, the talus.
Yeah, the talus.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the talus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It knows its stuff.
Thank you.
All right. I'm allowed on stage now. get yourself a partner, nice and quick. We don't have heaps of time. And we're going to do a bit of FI. So since we've been doing so much prone, yay, because we're looking at ankles, pop your person who's being touched into a comfortable prone position. Prone. Can you hear me? Yeah, prone. Comfortable prone position. Can you hear me now, Joel? Excellent. All right. If you're one of the people who are already ready and you've already found comfort, then you can start exploring that person's foot. Maybe bring it up so that the knee is at this angle, the 90-degree angle. And start exploring those bones that you were just exploring on yourself. So those 4 amazing ankle bones. Talus, tibia, fibula, and the one that has callus in it. Calcaneus. Didn't help me for remembering.
Oh, is it? Right, hang on, I'll put a bit more pressure on it.
Amazing that the skin there is 15 times thicker than other skin, yet we're so ticklish on the foot. Extra sensory stuff because there's so many tendons and nerves. So unless it's, well, they're part of your bones that come down. So your bones that come down here join in and meet down here. So have a look on this guy. Also, can I just say before I get into this, unless it's uncomfortable for the person lying in prone, if you could bring the foot up to a 90-degree angle, it'll be easier for the next part. That would be awesome. So where's that thing you have? Okay. So Margaret, you can see here, that knobbly bit on the side, that's this bone that comes all the way up here.
Technically, your ankle goes up to you.
Yeah, it sure does. That's right. All right, so have you found your favourite bone out of those 4? I mean, no, not favourite. Have you enjoyed exploring this other person's ankle after touching your own? Are there different things that you didn't sense in your own foot? Person being touched, are you learning about those bones that you just touched with a new light? And try to just stick to those 4 bones that we've been speaking about. So it's tempting to branch off into the amazing world of the foot, but try to explore those bones that are just the ankle. So you don't have to go very far to get past the ankle. So you can see from underneath, there's bones just here that are now reaching the ankle zone into the foot zone. And on the other side, it goes a little way, like maybe, what would we say, half an inch on the average person, depending. Should be able to try and feel the difference between when that bone glides off into those others. Great. Now, maybe let that person lying for a moment practice their own dorsiflexion and plantarflexion with their foot up. Have a watch. Gaze your feldy eyes upon them. Make sure they're wide. So just let go and let them do that for a moment. Just let them explore the dorsiflexion, plantarflexion. And then when you're ready, you can maybe go along for a ride of their dorsiflexion and plantarflexion movement. How does that feel, the person who's being touched? Does that give you a different sense of what you're doing? Because it is behind you. Did you have a different idea what you were doing before you were touched? Practice some dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. Without touching. And then when you're ready, go along the ride. If you've had a little while to go along for the ride, maybe now you want to try taking them for a ride. Exploring where do you want to hold in the ankle to help them go through this movement. How can the way that you're holding it give you some more information about how the ankle is performing this? Are you going at a pace that both of you can follow and stay with? Did you check in with the person you're working with? See if they feel like this meets up to what they can follow. While you're doing that, I'll just pop in a tiny bit of extra information, because something that's happening there is the neurovascular system, vasculature of that area is getting involved. So the arterial supply is derived from the malleolar, I think that's how it's said, branches of the anterior tibial, posterior tibial, and the fibular arteries. So that's the pulse on the inside of your ankle. So the innervation is provided by tibial and deep fibular nerves. You don't really have to understand that. I don't think I entirely understand that, but I love remembering that there are all these extra bits going through our muscles, our tendons, our neurovasculature system that supplies the message back and forth what's happening. Right, so then when you've done that, it's not entirely, I mean, if you're holding the heel part here, then you can also just experiment slightly about the inversion and eversion of the foot. So inversion, eversion, and maybe even put in a little bit of dorsi and plantarflexion in there, just a tiny little explore, because whilst a lot of the texts talk about it only does dorsi and plantar and not really anything else, just explore, like, it's just a tiny bit within the ankle that it will go sideways. The rest of it happens with the foot, but the ankle, you can feel a slight ability to move side to side without getting the foot super involved. So if you're going the full way, then you'll notice the foot is super involved. But how little can you do it to just feel what's happening in those four bones? Does that make any sense? All right, and then take a moment and swap over. We don't have ears. And same again with your partner. So just because we're in a little bit of a rush, don't forget to make sure your person feels comfortable. Explore those bones again, those four pivotal bones of this beautiful joint. Some texts I found call it a ring joint. So there's the two bones that come down from your knee that are the top part of it, and then your beautiful talus, and then your, I can never remember this one.
Which one?
The calcaneus. Heel bone. Well, yeah, heel bone, calcaneus. One day. Maybe if I just forget it enough, you'll remember it for me. Hey! No, I'm letting you learn. That might. Okay, so if you've explored those 4 bones a little bit, let them go into exploring their own dorsiflexion, plantarflexion. Have a watch. Let your gaze soften. Can you see what's happening beyond that joint? Can you feel what's happening beyond that joint if you're the person moving? Do you feel yourself going straight into the full extension of it, or do you find yourself trying to picture those 4 bones and what they're doing as you are performing this movement? So try for now to just stick to dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. If you go too much into the inversion and eversion, you're using a lot more than just your ankle bone per se. We will explore that a little bit because you can do that a little bit in your ankle, but what we want to explore right now is your dorsiflexion and your plantarflexion. And depending on which way your foot's turned, those other parts will naturally happen a little bit, but that's not what we're interested in just at this moment. Once you're happy that you've had a soft gaze on their movement, maybe come along for the ride, see what it feels like. Try when you're coming along for the ride to stick to the ankle area of touching. So where can you touch them on their ankle, on their calcaneus maybe? Can everyone hear me? Yeah, cool. Oh no, just checking in. Just checking in. You can always check in apparently. Yeah. All right, and if you're happy with your going along for the ride, if you've gotten extra information from that, both of you ready to explore the next part where the person touching can now take the person in prone for a ride. Maybe explore the difference between really going and touching the foot for this movement. So really using out towards the toes, the leg to perform the movement, and then come back in closer to the ankle again. And see what difference that makes. What information do you get? I mean, what we're really trying to learn about here is the ankle joint. What is it doing during this movement? Try and stick to that inquisitive line of those 4 bones. Particularly the talus, I mean. What is it doing? It's amazing.
Grab the toes.
All right. And then now that we've really looked at dorsiflexion and plantarflexion, have a little explore of the circulature of that joint. How much do those 4 ankle bones really allow you to move around each other? Let them do their own tiny little dance. Gorgeous. Those spotty socks are fantastic for this job. Beautiful, and when you're ready, let it go. And give your beautiful divine attention to Danielle, who is going to guide you through some ATM. So find your place on your own mat.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. So we're going to start with a scan, but it'll be a scan in standing. So would you like to stand up? Just as you're getting comfortable. Can you not hear? Yes. Can you hear now? Okay, yeah, that's loud, isn't it? So, in standing, would you put your weight first on one foot and then on the other? And bring your weight to, if you have one foot where you feel more stable, to that side. And if they're both much of a muchness, then onto your left leg. And then slowly lift the heel of your right foot with the weight on your left leg so that you notice the movement of the ankle. Think about the sensation in the ankle itself and think about what comes along. How your toes change, the movement in your knee, maybe your hip joint. Is your pelvis tilting? And how far can you feel an echo of that movement, perhaps up into your spine? Maybe you can even sense it in your shoulder girdle. Is your head moving? And what are your eyes doing? You might even find that your arms are joining in. So now come down onto the floor and into side lying. Lie on your right side and draw your knees up so that, yes, you're in that kind of knees at right angles, and use your arm to support your head so that your neck can be as comfortable as possible. And have your left knee on top of your right knee, your left heel on top of your right heel, and so on, toe on top of toe. And now slowly lift your top toes, keeping your heels together. And drop them down again. So the heels are together and the toes are opening. And bring them back. And do that a few times. And when you've done that a few times, leave your toes together and open up your heels. And bring them back down. And then pause. And now roll over onto your front and find a way to make yourself comfortable. With your right hand somewhere near your head, and you can do what you like with your left hand. And just check in that you are really comfortable. So bend both knees so that your feet are upwards and the soles of your feet are facing the ceiling. So with your knees bent up like that, have your shins more or less vertical so that they can just stay there with as little effort as possible. And just before we go on, notice if you're straining anything, if you can feel any tension that's maybe unnecessary. And if you can, just let it go. So bring your feet together and your knees together. And now, keeping your heels together, open your toes. And then bring them back together again. Do that a few times. And as you're doing it, notice the sensation in your ankle. And then do the movement the other way on, so that your toes stay together and your heels move apart. And next time you come to have your feet together, try tilting both feet so that you could imagine if you were standing, that you were to stand on the outsides of your feet. In other words, introversion. And come back to neutral again. Do that a few times. And as you're doing it, see if you can put your close attention, your focused attention, onto those bones in the ankle that you've just learnt about. While you have a more general focus on the other parts of you that come along with that movement. So make that movement slow. And every time that you start to feel the slightest fatigue or a little bit of strain, just let your feet down and have a rest. And after a moment's rest, bring them back up again. And continue with that tilting a couple of more times, very slowly. And now, lay your feet down and have a good rest. And after a moment, bring your feet back up into that position. Now we're going to bend the ankles in their habitual way. And think of the points of the compass. So point with your heels so that you bend your foot. And then tilt them the other way so that your heels come down. And come back into neutral again. And as you point your feet upwards, think of that as north. As you point them downwards, south. And now try and point them both to the east and to the west. And coming back into neutral, go to the north and then to the east and to the south and to the west and back up to the north, so that in fact you're drawing circles with your heels. And while you do that, pay attention to the sensations in your ankles. And you can change direction, drawing those small circles. You can make the circles very small. And can you make them very slow? And see what sensation you can notice. And then let your legs down onto the floor. Roll over and lie on your back and stretch your legs out. And while you're stretched out like that, lift up your right hand by bending your elbow so that your upper arm stays on the floor. And bring your thumb towards your first finger. And just flick it. Flick the thumb away from the finger. So you've got the soft pad of the forefinger touching the soft pad of the thumb and just flicking it. And then put that arm down. And now think about your toes. And imagine taking your big toe and putting it over the top of the next toe along. You do that with your right big toe. And again, just flick it away. And do that very slowly. And notice the sensation that creates. How it comes up through your ankle. And the rest of the structures. How far into your body can you feel that sensation or an echo of it or a resonance? And stop doing that. And with both feet, extend and flex the ankle joint. Do that a few times. And again, give your awareness to your feet and your ankles. Can you tell how far out your feet are turned, or are they turned in, or are they pointing to the ceiling? Does that change as you flex and extend? What else moves? How do your knees move? And then have a rest from that. And when you're ready, turn onto one side again. Draw your knees up. And slowly spiral up into sitting. Have a pause. And come all the way up into standing. And move your weight once again from one foot to the other. Put your weight on your foot where you felt most stable, or on your left leg, if that's where you started. And lift the heel of the other foot. And pay attention now to what you can sense in your ankle joint. What's your image of the ankle and the movement? And when you're ready, take that into walking and have a little walk around the room. There we are. The ankle.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your brilliant work. And we hope that you learnt a little bit more about the ankle joint from that, maybe sensed a little bit more about the ankle joint from that. And yeah, thank you for your awareness for our lesson.
Thank you.
Oh, if you have any questions, probably best to ask that book, the trainers, or Google.